Good evening. Welcome to the History Department's promotional video for A-Level History. My name is Mrs Dobson and I'm Curriculum Strategic Lead for History and Politics, but I'm going to talk to you about the history provision that we offer at Penistone tonight. There are 4 key objectives from this presentation. Number 1, to introduce the course to you and to explain what we study across the 2 years. Number 2, to look at how the course is assessed. Number 3, to discuss the benefits of studying history and explain what an history A-level can lead to. And then number 4, look at the success of our students and listen to the views that they have. We are really proud of this provision that we're going to talk you through tonight. We're also really proud of the students that we teach and those who have decided to study this course at university. We hope that this presentation will help you in making the right choice for your A-level studies. This slide covers the actual course, and you can see on the screen the framework that OCR provides us with. There are 4 key components to the A-level course. As we've already said, we follow the OCR exam board History A specification. 2 of those modules are taught in Year 12 and 2 of them are taught in Year 13. It's 80% exam and 20% non-examined assessment, and I'll go through each of the course modules over the next few slides. The first 2 are completed in Year 12, the British Period Study and the Non-British Period Study. The remaining 2 are covered in Year 13, a big thematic study worth 40% of the overall A-level and the topic-based essay or the NEA, which is worth 20% overall. OCR gives us a framework to work with, as you saw from the previous slide. What we have to do as a department is choose the units which we think will both build upon the topics and skills covered lower down school, but also topics we think are going to enthuse and engage you about history. Whether you studied history at Penistone or whether you attended a different secondary school, I'm sure you'll find links between what we cover in Year 12 and 13 to what you've looked at lower down school with your teachers. For us at Penistone, there are 4 distinct links which we try and build upon in the Year 12 and 13 course. The first of which is the protest unit we cover in Year 8. We look at the demand for the right to vote and how working class people started to demand more from their governments. We consider that again in Year 12 by looking at the Chartist movement. We also consider the USA in conflict module in more depth. In Year 10 and 11, we looked at the role of the civil rights movement and how media in particular influenced some of those events. We're going to take that even further. Our topic concentrated in the 50s and 60s at GCSE. We're going to look at the earlier period after the abolition of slavery right up until 1992 and consider how African Americans' lives developed and changed as a result of some of the policies and initiatives that took place during that time period. We're also going to explore the American West unit in more detail. This is a topic that you didn't get to cover in the GCSE if you studied at Penistone because of the COVID closure, but we're going to look at it in more detail in Year 13. Native Americans were very much the forgotten Americans, so we're going to consider what life was like for them on reservations, the battles they had with government officials, and we're going to also look at the impact that government policy had on their lives. When things did get better for Native Americans, we're going to look at why, the causes and the consequences of those changes. The final module that we'll consider, which has links to lower down school, is that topic of conflict. I'm sure that you will have studied the First and Second World War at some point lower down school. We're going to look at that again in Year 12 and Year 13, but from a Russia perspective. We're going to consider the impact of the First World War on Russian politics, and you're also going to look at Stalin's leadership during the Second World War as part of your coursework in Year 13. Okay, so we'll kickstart Year 12 by looking at the British Period Study and the Non-British Period Study. As we've already hinted at, the British Period Study will look at Pitt and Peel, 2 Prime Ministers between 1783 and 1853, and we'll look at how society changed as a result of some of their policies. The Non-British Period Study is the Russian module, 1894 to 1941, a key period in Russian history and a time where great transformation took place. The The pictures on the screen show us a little bit more about the Pitt to Peel course. We start the course with Pitt as our Prime Minister and we finish with Peel. And during their premierships, we've got real social, economic and political change. We've got a rise in the demand for suffrage, the right to vote. A number of key protests took place and the government reacted quite harshly to those protests, so we look at the impact that had. We also consider Britain's role in the Napoleonic Wars. We look at how that war was fought, the consequences of it, and how Britain had a key role in trying to shape Europe after the conflict. We also, more importantly, look at the impact of the Industrial Revolution. You probably will have covered this lower down school, and the Industrial Revolution was the shift from the countryside to towns, and people started to work in factories. More importantly, lots of children started to work in factories. So we consider the implications of that, and we look at how Peel, in particular, introduced social reform to try and improve conditions for people working in those factories. We also have to look at the Poor Law Amendment Act. We can see Oliver from the Charles Dickens novel in the screen, and we look at the introduction of workhouses in Britain and what conditions were really like for people who were living in them. The second module you will study in Year 12 is the Russia module. This is a really exciting piece of history to consider. It's something that's brand new to most of you, as Russian history isn't really covered lower down school at Key Stage 3 or Key Stage 4. The course starts by looking at Tsar Nicholas II and his leadership. His way of ruling the country during this time period has a real impact on the people and really serious considerations and implications. All members of his family were assassinated during the revolutions that occurred later on. And one thing that you've got to consider is the causes, the events and the aftermath of those two revolutions. A revolution is overthrowing the existing order and replacing it with something new. So you look at the reasons that brought Russians to demanding that revolution and demanding that change occur, and you'll also look about what happened next following the events of the revolution. As well as looking at Tsar Nicholas's leadership style, you'll also look at a number of different leaders within Russia: Lenin, Trotsky, and then much later Stalin. You'll consider that the civil war that Russia experienced, and you'll look at the impact of that war on ordinary people. When you consider Stalin, you'll also look at the Great Terror and the purges which Stalin was responsible for. The purges led millions of ordinary Russians to their death. They either were executed or perished in labour camps. So you'll look at the events leading up to the purges, Stalin's motivations, and what that meant for the people who were living within the country at the time. The big thematic study is completed in Year 13. As we can see from that first slide, it's worth 40% of the total A level, and the actual course content is called Civil Rights in the USA, 1865 to 1992. Although we think of African Americans when we consider the civil rights movement, we will also look at other minority groups. You will also take your Russian history a little bit further in Year 13 by considering Stalin's leadership during the Second World War, and that will be the key topic for your NEA. As the civil rights topic is the thematic topic, we will look at a huge time period, 1865 to 1992. And what we have to do is we have to identify factors that were responsible for change and continuity during that time period, factors that might have helped or hindered the four minority groups in gaining more rights. We look at African Americans, workers, Native Americans and women, and we consider what their position was like at the start of the time period and how far they might have progressed by 1992. In order to do that, we have to look at members of the groups themselves, high-profile protests that might have occurred, and also militant action that groups might have considered. We also look at the role of presidents, the Supreme Court and the government. We look at the impact of policies and initiatives from those individuals and how that might have impacted on civil rights. We also look at external factors. We look at the war. We look at the boom periods in America and the bust periods, and we consider whether the rights of these four groups got better or worse during those time periods. The actual NEA question is very similar to some you might have experienced at GCSE. It's a sentence and a how far do you agree question. Stalin's leadership was the most important reason for the Soviet victory over Germany in the 1941-5 war. How far do you agree? However, the main difference is the way in which this piece of assessment is carried out. This is independently researched. It's about you going away and finding out about the 9 different factors that are outlined in that box and considering how important they were in Stalin's overall victory. The actual NEA is 3,000 to 4,000 words. It is marked by your teacher, but it's moderated by the exam board, and there's some strict guidelines that we have to follow. As part of the NEA, you have to consider lots of different perspectives and viewpoints, and you use both primary and secondary source material in order to do that. So it's really important to go away and to read articles and journals and to look at some primary source material to try and find out more about Stalin's leadership during this period. Your NEA needs to carry or contain really strong judgments throughout. However, what's really great about this piece of NEA is it's worth 20% overall. So you are going into that exam with a very strong foundation which you can then build upon, and that's a real benefit to this A-level course for you studying it. We've already talked about the fact that the A-level carries 3 different exams, but we can see on this slide how long each exam is. Unit 1, Pit to Peel, is 1 hour 30 minutes. Unit 2, the Russia exam, is 1 hour, and Unit 3, the civil rights topic, is 2 hours and 30, and that's really because it's worth 40% overall. Units 1 and 3 contain evidence, sources and interpretations, and you've got to analyse and evaluate those in relation to a question. All 3 units, but especially paper 2, contain knowledge retrieval questions. They're essay questions, similar to the ones that you've completed at GCSE, but a great deal of revision and preparation is required to be able to answer those questions effectively. Now that we've looked at what the course actually entails, we can start to think of the benefits of A-level history and what it could lead to beyond Post16. Firstly, it's a highly respectable and credible subject. Employers and university admissions tutors know how hard A-level historians have to work, and that looks incredibly good on your application forms. It's also a very academic subject. History graduates comment on how the study of history supports their ability to read quickly and effectively. They can process large amounts of information, think deeply about a subject, and that helps them to develop convincing arguments. It provides you with the skills that employers are looking for, and more importantly for me, it helps you to understand the present day. The link between the past and the present is inescapable, and it should be explored. It will help you to form opinions about key events that are occurring in 2020, and you'll understand the context of what led those people or those policies to that particular point. This particular image shows you some of the different career opportunities that can come about as a result of studying A-level history. You've heard a lot from me this evening about the benefits of A-level history, but what about listening to the views of some of our students? You might want to press pause as the speech bubbles appear on the screen so you can read the views in full. The skills that we develop in history can lend themselves to lots of different A-level subjects, and history can fit alongside a number of the A-levels that are offered at Penistone. The more notable connections are English language and literature, government and politics, sociology and media studies. Our Year 13 students have gathered together some of their views on why they think history fits quite nicely with their other A-level studies. Again, you might want to press pause at this point so you can read the views in full. I'm going to end the presentation on this slide, which contains examples of students' work. A-level history is by no means an easy A-level, but we're here to support you every step of the way. We've got lots of structures that we can put in place. We've got lots of clips and videos and articles that we can read to help your understanding of history develop. We really hope that you'll decide to take history at A-level at Penistone, and we're here to answer any questions you might have. Thank you very much for listening.